high in the mountains of Iwama, where the wind barely grazes the tops of the pines and the song of birds seems to float eternally in the air, lived an old master named Daichi. His cabin, made of wood aged by time, sat on the edge of a lake so still that the entire sky was reflected on its surface, as if the world were looking at itself. Every morning before dawn, Daichi would sit on a smooth stone by the water. He didn't speak. He didn't think. He simply was. His very presence seemed to hold the rhythm of the universe, as if his silence gave the day permission to begin. One day, a young man named Run, full of doubts and inner storms, climbed to the cabin in search of answers. He carried with him a life of rushing, noise, and fighting against everything, even himself. "Master," he said, bowing his head, "I've come to learn how to find peace. Everything inside me is a whirlwind." Daichi didn't respond. He simply pointed at the lake. "Look," he whispered. Ren stared, confused. "What do you see?" the master asked. "I see the reflection of the clouds, the blue sky, the branches. It's beautiful," Ren replied. "And yet," Daichi said, "if you threw a stone, everything would ripple. The beauty would still be there, but you wouldn't be able to see it until the water was still again." The young man frowned, trying to understand. "Your mind is the same, Ren," Daichi added. "You don't need to change the world to find peace. You only need to let your inner lake become calm." Ren spent his first night in the master's cabin, covered with a simple blanket and accompanied only by the sound of the wind. He struggled to sleep. His mind wouldn't stop. Memories, worries, endless lists of what he needed to do when he returned to the city. Everything spun around like leaves trapped in a whirlwind. The next morning, Daichi woke him with the first ray of sunlight. "Today we won't talk," he said with a slight smile. "We will only walk." Ren nodded, though he didn't understand the purpose. They walked in silence along hidden paths between the trees, climbing hills covered in mist and descending toward crystal-clear streams. Sometimes, the only sound was the crunch of their footsteps on the dry leaves. At first, Ren felt uncomfortable with the silence. He tried to start a conversation, but Daichi responded only with gentle gestures or a thoughtful look. Little by little, Ren began to notice things he had never perceived before. The damp aroma of the moss, the way a butterfly landed on a branch, the harmony of the forest breathing with him. After several hours, they stopped by a tree twisted by age. Daichi sat in its shade, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. Ren followed his lead. For the first time in a long while, he didn't think about anything. He simply felt the moment. In that instant, without anyone speaking a word, an unknown peace began to spring from the center of his chest, like a secret spring that had been waiting to be discovered. That night, Ren didn't have to struggle to fall asleep. The silence was no longer a threat, but a soft blanket that wrapped around him. The wind no longer sounded like noise. It was an ancient song. His breathing slowed. His chest felt less tight. The next morning, as they shared a bowl of rice and hot tea, Ren broke the silence. "Master, yesterday, for a moment, I felt like nothing had happened, and at the same time, everything had." Daichi nodded calmly. "Peace isn't found outside, Ren. It's cultivated. Like bamboo, it grows in silence, unnoticed, until one day, its shadow offers you shelter." The young man looked at him, trying to take in his words. "But when I return to my world," he said with a trace of sadness, "everything will be noisy again. The traffic, the problems, the demands. How can I carry this peace with me?" Daichi looked at him intently with compassion. "It's not about escaping the world," he replied. "It's about not letting the world live inside you." Then he added, "You choose what you feed. the storm or the stillness. The storm will make noise, but only stillness will show you the way. Ren lowered his gaze. Inside, something had begun to break. Not with pain, but like a shell cracking open to let a seed be born. Days passed, and Ren began to move more slowly, speak less, and listen more. He discovered that the birds didn't sing for him, but that by listening to them, something inside him felt lighter. He learned to sweep the cabin not as a chore, but as a meditation. Each movement became a simple dance, each breath a bow to the present moment. One morning, while gathering water from the lake, Ren saw his reflection. Not the tired face he had arrived with, but one that looked softer, more at peace. He stared at himself for a long while. For the first time, he didn't judge what he saw. He simply recognized it. He returned to the master with a question on his lips. "Why did you never give me a direct answer, master?" Daichi smiled. "Because you didn't come for answers, Ren. You came to remember. Peace cannot be taught. It can only be remembered." Ren furrowed his brow slightly. "Remember what?" "That you were born with it. But the noise of the world made you forget." The young man fell silent. A simple truth, like a breeze sweeping the dust off the soul. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and the sky lit up in golden hues, Ren knew he was no longer the same. Not because he had learned something new, but because he had finally stopped fighting what had always been within him. Peace. That night, Ren sat with the master by the fire. The flames danced gently, casting flickering shadows on the walls of the cabin. The silence between them wasn't awkward, but deep, as if words were unnecessary, because everything had already been said in the warmth of the tea, the dim light, the unhurried rhythm of the moment. "Tomorrow I'll leave," Ren said calmly. Daichi nodded, with neither surprise nor sadness. He knew every guest was just a passing cloud in the sky of his mountain. "Remember this," he said softly. "When you feel the world pulling you, don't try to stop it. Stop yourself. If your inner world is at peace, nothing outside can truly shake you." Ren nodded slowly. "And if I lose that peace?" The master leaned forward, picked up a bit of ash with his fingers, and let it fall to the earth. "Peace doesn't run away. You walk away from it, but it always waits, like a root beneath the snow. You just have to return." The fire crackled gently. Ren watched as the embers faded one by one, without hurry, and he understood that, just as the fire knows when to go out, life also knows when to fall silent. That night, he didn't dream of anything, and yet, upon waking, he felt as though he had traveled far, deep within himself. Ren descended from the mountain at dawn. The sky was still painted in soft gray, and the clouds drifted slowly, as if they too were practicing calm. Every step he took was mindful. He felt the weight of his feet on the earth, the brush of air on his skin, the steady rhythm of his breath. The village appeared in the distance, bustling as always. People rushing, children running, merchants shouting prices. Everything was the same, but Ren was not. He moved through the crowd like a leaf floating down a river. He didn't fight the current, he simply let it carry him. The voices and noises that once overwhelmed him were still there, but they no longer entered him. He observed them, acknowledged them, and let them pass. He stopped in front of an old man struggling with a stubborn donkey. Before, he might have stepped in with impatience or judgment, but now he simply watched, smiled, and offered a steady hand. The man looked at him with gratitude, and the donkey, as if by magic, took a step forward. "Thank you, young man," the elder said. Ren nodded without words. There was no need to speak. The simple gesture spoke for itself. He understood then that living in peace didn't mean separating from the world. It meant walking within it without losing your center. Amid the noise, his soul remained still, like the lake, like the master, like the root that never moves, even when the tree sways in the wind. As the days passed, Run returned to his everyday life, but not at the same pace as before. He woke up early, not out of obligation but by choice. He took a deep breath before speaking and listened before responding. He had come to understand that calm wasn't the absence of noise, but the presence of awareness. When someone yelled at him, he didn't respond with anger, but with a pause. When the world seemed to demand haste, he slowed down. Living in calm, he remembered, is an act of courage in a world that runs without direction. People began to notice the change. Some mocked him, others approached with curiosity. "What happened to you up on that mountain?" a longtime friend asked him. Ren smiled with serenity. "Nothing happened to me," he replied. "I just stopped running." "Aren't you afraid of being left behind?" Ren looked up at the sky, where a cloud drifted slowly, unhurried, with no clear direction. "Sometimes," he said, "being still is the only way not to get lost." That day, as he walked down a quiet path at sunset, he felt his heart beating to a different rhythm. It no longer beat against the world, but with it. And in that silent synchrony, he found something more valuable than any answer: balance. The seasons passed. Spring covered the fields with flowers. Summer brought the murmurs of rivers. Autumn painted the trees with fire, and winter silenced everything with its white mantle. Ren continued living in the village, but his soul remained on the mountain. One day, upon waking, he felt the urge to see the master again. He took the same path, crossed the same forest, and arrived at the same cabin by the lake. But this time, Daichi was not there. On the stone where he used to meditate, there was a small pine twig and an empty bowl. Ren understood. The master had left, like a cloud that stops floating in the sky. No goodbyes, no drama, just with the same calm with which he lived. Ren sat by the lake in silence, and he waited. The wind blew gently. The leaves danced without resistance. The water reflected the sky effortlessly, and in that moment, Run closed his eyes and smiled. The calm was not in the master. It was not in the mountain. It was not in the words. It was in him. From that day on, every step he took was an act of peace. Not because the world had changed, but because he no longer fought against the current. He had learned the secret the master never said aloud. Living in calm is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about embracing it without losing yourself in it.